the ground beneath our feet is rarely still. But what if it's not just trembling but tearing? A series of powerful earthquakes has shaken the East African Rift, raising a terrifying question: is Africa truly breaking apart? This investigation digs deep, uncovering a hidden force that could reshape the face of our planet. Join us as we uncover the secrets hidden beneath the surface. A massive crack, stretching 50 feet deep, suddenly appeared in Kenya's Rift Valley, leaving residents and scientists in shock. This wasn't just an isolated event but a dramatic sign of a much larger geological transformation unfolding beneath Africa. Over the past month, the region has experienced 31 strong earthquakes, proving that the East African Rift is becoming increasingly unstable. The most significant of these quakes, a 5.8 magnitude earthquake, struck recently, further stressing the fault lines that are slowly tearing the continent apart. Seismic activity in the region has intensified, particularly around Ethiopia's Fentale volcano, where a swarm of earthquakes has been recorded. A 5.1 magnitude quake on December 29 at 10:20 p.m. Universal Time Coordinated hit 46 kilometers north of Metahara and 119 kilometers northeast of Nazareth, now Adama, shaking the land at a shallow depth of 10 kilometers (6.2 miles). Just hours later, on December 30 at 7:42 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated, another 4.7 magnitude tremor struck 23 kilometers southeast of Metahara, reinforcing concerns that magma is rising beneath the volcano. The shallow nature of these quakes made them widely felt, even reaching the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. This recent seismic swarm is reminiscent of the 1989 Afar earthquake sequence, which saw 25 earthquakes exceeding magnitude 4.2 strike within a 48-hour window. Similar swarms in the past have preceded tectonic shifts and volcanic eruptions, making the current activity a major cause for concern. The East African Rift, stretching for more than 3,000 kilometers, 1,864 miles, is one of the most seismically active places on Earth. Because of the incredibly slow divergence of the Nubian and Somalian tectonic plates, this process has been occurring for millions of years and is already tearing the continent apart. Recent discoveries made by scientists have pinpointed mantle plumes beneath the rift, generating extremely high temperatures that develop thermal bulges, major ones in central Kenya and the Afar region of Ethiopia. Because of this, the crust is weakened, causing fracturing and increased volcanic activity, followed by colossal lava floods termed flood basalt eruptions. Over millions of years, this has been developing the Rift Valley, which now continues to separate the continent. Movement occurs at a range of fractional inches each year, but those enormous tremors like that of the recent quakes can trigger a sudden opening of the rift and increased activity of volcanism along it. The same phenomenon that ripped apart South America and Africa millions of years ago is still evident today, actively working to shape East Africa. Multitudes near the geological fault line face increasing risk, up to millions. Over 3.4 million people are living within a 100 kilometers (62-mile) radius of the Fentale volcano, placing them at risk from both seismic activity and possible eruptions. Continuous tremors were reported this night by residents in Metahara, 23,400 residents, and Awash, 11,400 residents, indicating some small, undetected quakes happening alongside the major ones. Scientists are warning that increasing seismic activity can result in bigger earthquakes, land collapses, or possibly even a volcanic eruption. Still, no direct physical damage has been reported. However, the government is advising ready vigilance by the communities, as the slow but inevitable transformation begins in Africa. On December 29 at 10:20 p.m. Universal Time Coordinated, a powerful 5.8 magnitude earthquake struck the East African Rift, shaking the ground across Ethiopia and beyond. The tremor originated at a depth of 10 kilometers (6.2 miles), a shallow level that made its effects widely felt. The epicenter was located 46 kilometers (28 miles) north of Metahara and 119 kilometers (74 miles) northeast of Nazareth, placing it dangerously close to heavily populated areas. The earthquake was not an isolated event but part of a growing seismic crisis in the region. In just 1 month, 31 strong earthquakes have been recorded along the East African Rift, highlighting an alarming increase in tectonic activity. The seismic unrest did not end there. Less than a day later, on December 30 at 7:42 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated, another 4.7 magnitude earthquake struck just 23 kilometers southeast of Metahara, reinforcing fears that the rift's instability is worsening. These quakes are particularly concerning because they occurred near Ethiopia's Fentale volcano, a historically active volcano with a record of eruptions, including one in 1820 CE. Experts believe the recent tremors may indicate magma movement beneath the volcano, which could lead to an eruption if the pressure continues to build. Residents in surrounding towns reported continuous tremors throughout the night, suggesting that many smaller, undetected quakes accompanied the larger ones. The East African Rift is presently changing. It is a 3,000 kilometers long tectonic boundary between the Red Sea and Mozambique. The Nubian or Somalian tectonic plates are presently separating, and in deep fissures, earthquakes have increased volcanic activities. Scientists have warned that new earthquakes might speed up the slow division of the continent, ultimately leading to the emergence of a new ocean after millions of years that will divide Africa into two. The last time such an event occurred on Earth was for the separation of South America and Africa into what is now known as the Atlantic Ocean. The reporting evidence of the earthquakes indicates that the region is affected by almost similar geological activity. As yet, there have been no confirmed reports of deceased or damaged places, but the frequency and severity of earthquakes are triggering anxiety among geologists and emergency authorities. Much of the local earthquake information is derived from very few global seismic networks, which only pick up large quakes, mostly avoiding small but still significant earthquakes. Therefore, scientists find it hard to postulate the seismic hazard facing public in time. Local monitoring should be boosted to provide better guidelines and preparedness plans against future geogenic events. Notably, these data gaps further complicate the prediction of a future major earthquake occurrence in terms of when and where. Hence, millions near the fault zone, the likes of Metahara, Awash, and Addis Ababa, need to be put on better monitoring, preparedness, and awareness, geologists say. The Earth is reshaping itself under East Africa, and this transformation is very slow, but its impacts could be felt much earlier than anticipated. The East African Rift Valley, stretching over 3,000 kilometers, 1,864 miles, from the Red Sea to Mozambique, is one of the most significant geological formations on Earth. Scientists have long observed that this vast rift is gradually expanding as the Nubian and Somalian tectonic plates continue to drift apart. This slow but relentless separation is not just causing earthquakes and volcanic activity, it is laying the foundation for a future ocean that could eventually split Africa into two landmasses. The process is similar to what occurred millions of years ago when South America and Africa separated, leading to the formation of the Atlantic Ocean. While the complete transformation will take an estimated 5 to 10 million years, the evidence of Africa's future split is already visible in the cracks and fissures appearing across the region. The most striking example of this process occurred in Kenya, where a massive 50-foot deep fissure suddenly appeared in the Rift Valley, stunning locals and scientists alike. This dramatic surface rupture was a clear sign that the land was actively shifting beneath the continent. Further north, Ethiopia's Afar region, often described as a Y-shaped fracture in the Earth's crust, is experiencing continuous seismic activity, which could eventually allow water from the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden to flood the region. According to NASA's Earth Observatory, this would mark the birth of a new ocean as parts of Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique, along with Eritrea and Djibouti, break away from the main African continent, forming an island similar to Madagascar. Scientists believe that as rifting continues, the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden will eventually flood the depression, accelerating the formation of this new ocean. The seismic activity along the Rift Valley appears to be magnifying and making this geological movement worse every month. A recent earthquake of 5.8 magnitudes was registered in Ethiopia, and 31 strong earthquake jolts occurred in the past month alone, underscoring the rift becoming increasingly unstable. Increased seismic activity has been observed at the Fentale volcano, located near the northern end of the rift, as scientists believe possible indication of an impending volcanic eruption. Available historical data showed that the last eruption at Fentale was recorded in 1820 CE, producing basaltic lava flows. If the process of magma intrusion continues, it could very well lead to another eruption, modifying the geological features in the landscape of the Rift Valley. The magnitude of the effects brought about by the gradual spreading of the rift has the potential to go deep into the future. What are today landlocked nations of Ethiopia and Uganda may one day have shores and ports, giving way to dramatic changes in their economies and trade prospects. In terms of human beings, however, it has a present threat of seismic instability to millions who live along these fault lines. Towns like Metahara and Awash have come to know continuous tremors, and to these, experts warn of the eventuality of major earthquakes or collapses of ground at any time. It is not just a scientific phenomenon, this is an ever-changing event that eventually will create a new ocean, changing the geography of Africa. Awakening beneath Africa. Beneath the shifting tectonic plates of the East African Rift, a more ominous force is stirring. Volcanic activity is on the rise. Scientists monitoring Ethiopia's Fentale volcano, located at the northern end of the rift, have recorded a surge in seismic activity. In just 2 days, a series of earthquakes ranging from 4.3 to 5.1 in magnitude have struck the region. The strongest of these, a 5.1 magnitude earthquake on December 29 at 10:20 p.m. Universal Time Coordinated, was centered 46 kilometers, 28 miles, north of Metahara and 119 kilometers, 74 miles, northeast of Nazareth, at a shallow depth of 10 kilometers, 6.2 miles. Less than a day later, another 4.7 magnitude tremor followed on December 30 at 7:42 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated, intensifying concerns that magma is actively rising beneath the surface. Experts believe this heightened seismic activity is linked to a shallow magma intrusion beneath Fentale volcano, significantly increasing the probability of an eruption. Fentale's summit features a caldera measuring 2.5 by 4.5 kilometers, 1.6 by 2.8 miles, a visible reminder of the immense geological forces shaping the region. Historical records show that Fentale last erupted in 1820 CE, producing basaltic lava flows from fissures on its southern flank. However, an even earlier eruption occurred around 1250 CE, unleashing rhyolitic flows that reportedly destroyed a local town and church. These past eruptions emphasize the ongoing volcanic threat, and with current seismic swarms occurring near Fentale, scientists warn that another eruption could be imminent. The East African Rift, which is currently the home of some of the most active and dangerous volcanoes in the whole of Africa, has its structures influenced by mantle plumes. Mantle plumes are generally areas of superheated magma rising from deep down the surface of the Earth, weakening the crust and forming volcanic hotspots. They are supposed to have been responsible for the formation of current rift valleys and highland regions in Ethiopia and Kenya. The thermal bulges resulting from the intense heat have resulted in episodes of flood basalt eruptions, where lava spreads over a very wide area in a fiery deluge. The recent outflows have been quite minor in the Rift Valley area, but a massive event for this region can be expected in the future as magma piles itself under the major volcanic sites. For the millions of people living around these volcanoes, that risk is perceived to weigh increasingly on them. Some of the towns, such as Metahara and Awash, report several nights of continuous ground tremors, with indications that smaller quakes may accompany these underdetected larger ones. Authorities are monitoring the situation very closely, although it poses a challenge, especially in the lack of a dedicated local seismic network. Scientists are currently forced to rely on global monitoring systems and satellite images to track activity changes in the volcano, making it all the more difficult to ascertain the true extent of that activity without real-time data on locations. A huge eruption in the Fentale volcano or somewhere else in the rift would be catastrophic to surrounding communities, with lava flows, ash clouds, and, at times, some secondary seismic activity as well. Here, volcanoes beneath Africa are waking, and with every tremor, the possibility of an explosive event increases. A continent breaking in two. Scientists have long predicted that Africa is slowly splitting into two separate landmasses, but recent seismic activity has confirmed that this process is accelerating. The East African Rift, stretching over 3,000 kilometers, 1,864 miles, from the Red Sea to Mozambique, marks the boundary where the Nubian and Somalian tectonic plates are pulling apart. While this movement has been occurring at a fraction of an inch per year, recent earthquakes and volcanic activity suggest that certain areas are shifting at a much faster rate. The sudden appearance of a 50-foot deep crack in Kenya and the 31 strong earthquakes recorded in the past month highlight the ongoing fragmentation of the continent. According to geologists, this rifting is following the same pattern that led to the separation of South America and Africa millions of years ago, eventually forming the Atlantic Ocean. One of the most significant concerns for scientists is the Afar region in Ethiopia, which is often described as a Y-shaped fracture in the Earth's crust. This area is home to one of the world's most geologically active zones, where the Nubian, Somalian, and Arabian tectonic plates are interacting. According to NASA's Earth Observatory, the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea will eventually flood this region, creating a new ocean. The process is already underway as thermal bulges and mantle plumes beneath the crust are weakening the land, allowing cracks and fissures to form. Ken McDonald, a marine geophysicist from the University of California, Santa Barbara, predicts that over the next 5 to 10 million years, East Africa will split completely from the continent, forming an island similar to Madagascar. The primary driving forces behind this change, seismic and volcanic activities, are said to have been intensified by recent happenings suggesting an increased rate of expansion of the rift. Although quite numerous in structures, the 5.8 magnitude quake on the 29th day of December, including recent aftershocks around Fentale volcano in Ethiopia, has raised a red flag on the possibility that intensified magma activity is occurring below the rift. Without a dedicated local seismic monitoring network, one cannot tell how fast the land is shifting. However, scientists are tracking the rift's progress using global seismic data and satellite imagery. Studies have also shown that similar rifting processes have taken place all throughout Earth's history, reshaping the continents and oceans over millions of years. According to scientists, it should not be assumed that this is a mere geological event that will occur somewhere in the future because it is happening at this very time. Countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and later Mozambique will face strange changes on their map, perhaps gaining new coastlines and access to the ocean. But for now, erosion and earthquakes remain close threats. They need to be monitored and prepared for. Breaking up Africa slowly calls to mind that Earth's features are constantly changing and not just limited by human borders. The land may be splitting now, but what comes next could change Africa's geography in a way no one has ever seen before. How a new ocean will form. Scientists predict that a new ocean will one day form in East Africa as the Nubian and Somalian tectonic plates continue to drift apart. The process is already evident in the East African Rift, a massive geological fracture stretching over 3,000 kilometers, 1,864 miles, from the Red Sea to Mozambique. The recent increase in seismic activity, including a 5.8 magnitude earthquake on December 29, suggests that the rifting process is accelerating. According to NASA's Earth Observatory, the Afar region in Ethiopia is the focal point of this transformation, where three tectonic plates, the Nubian, Somalian, and Arabian plates, are pulling away from each other. As this rift widens, scientists expect that water from the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden will eventually flood into the depression, forming a new ocean that will permanently divide East Africa from the rest of the continent. The tremor was widely felt in towns like Metahara and Awash, as well as in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia's capital. Less than a day later, another 4.7 magnitude earthquake struck the area, adding to concerns that the land beneath these communities is becoming increasingly unstable. Residents have reported continuous tremors throughout the night, suggesting that smaller, undetected earthquakes are occurring alongside the major ones. Destruction or ground collapse represents one of the greatest risks posed by this dangerous widening rift. In the event the domain of deep cracks begins to form, such as much recently in Kenya, where it suddenly appeared, a 50-foot fissure, through a network of roads into farmlands, displacing some families due to its sudden development. Such cracks can develop in other parts of the Rift Valley, threatening homes, businesses, and essential infrastructure. Furthermore, continuing evidence of heightened volcanic activity near Ethiopia's Fentale volcano heightens fears of eruptions and subsequent release of hazardous ash clouds and lava flows. The last major eruption of Fentale in 1820 CE produced basaltic lava flows, and scientists warn that seismically active events being monitored may lead to another eruption soon. If such evocation happens, it could lead to the discharge of tens of thousands of persons. The economic implications of the earthquakes are serious. The majority of the regions affected by the earthquakes rely on agricultural and livestock economies, both of which are very sensitive to earthquakes, land shifts, and volcanic eruptions. Loss of farmland due to fissures and lava flows could mean eventual food shortages and economic instability. Moreover, towns such as Metahara, which has about 23,400 inhabitants, and Awash, which is home to 11,400 residents, are close to the major roads and trade routes. Any destruction of such infrastructures would mean disruption in transportation and commerce. These places become very vulnerable to severe economic tragedy due to lack of preparedness for disaster to bring about recovery after future seismic events. The supercontinent that once was. The slow but relentless splitting of Africa is part of a much older geological cycle that has been shaping the Earth for hundreds of millions of years. Scientists trace the origins of today's continents back to a time when the Earth was dominated by a single supercontinent called Pangaea, which existed around 300 million years ago. Pangaea was surrounded by a vast ocean known as Panthalassa, and for millions of years, it remained intact. Before Pangaea, Rodinia, 1.1 billion years ago, and Gondwana, 600 million years ago, existed as earlier supercontinents, demonstrating how Earth has gone through multiple cycles of landmass formation and breakup. The East African Rift is just the latest phase in this ongoing geological evolution. However, the relentless forces within the Earth's lithosphere, the rigid outer layer of the planet composed of massive tectonic plates, gradually fractured Pangaea, breaking it into pieces. These pieces slowly drifted apart due to tectonic movements, eventually forming the continents and oceans we recognize today. One of the most interesting pieces of evidence for this breakup is the coastline alignment between continents. The east coasts of South America and the west coasts of Africa puzzle-like fit as if they had been part of one landmass at that time. This process of splitting happened some 180 million years ago, building up the Atlantic Ocean when the Southern American and African plates moved apart. The same geological forces that divided the continents are now in action in East Africa, where the Nubian and Somalian plates diverge as currently seen along the East African Rift. Scientists predict that a new ocean will develop in the fullness of time, similar to what separated South America and Africa. Cycles of assembly and disassembly of continents characterize all geological history. Wilson's cycle refers to this process. Earth was not limited to Pangaea earlier but also hosted supercontinents like Rodinia, in the vicinity of 1.1 billion years, and Gondwana, around 600 million years ago. They shared the same fate. They finally fragmented within the movements of their tectonics. The plus thing is, it is undergoing the continental breakup following all these previous lines of the supercontinents, the present-day East African Rift. Earth's geography is evolving permanently in the next 5 to 10 million years, as NASA's Earth Observatory describes the continuous and slow thinning of the crust in the Afar area as the precursor of a new ocean formation. Future quakes and eruptions. Predicting earthquakes and volcanic eruptions remains one of the greatest challenges in modern geology, and the East African Rift presents a particularly difficult case. In the past month alone, 31 strong earthquakes have been recorded in the region, including a 5.8 magnitude quake on December 29 and a 4.7 magnitude tremor on December 30, both near Ethiopia's Fentale volcano. These seismic events suggest that magma is rising beneath the surface, increasing the probability of a volcanic eruption. However, because the region lacks a dedicated local seismic monitoring network, scientists are forced to rely on global monitoring systems, which only detect the largest earthquakes. This lack of real-time, on-the-ground data makes it extremely difficult to forecast when and where the next major earthquake or eruption might occur. The unpredictable nature of seismic activity in the rift is further complicated by its unique geological setting. The Nubian and Somalian tectonic plates are actively pulling apart, creating faults and fractures that can trigger both tectonic earthquakes and volcanotectonic quakes linked to magma movement. The Fentale volcano, which last erupted in 1820 CE, has a history of producing basaltic lava flows and explosive eruptions. Given the recent increase in seismic activity near the volcano, scientists fear that a new eruption could happen with little warning. Residents in towns like Metahara and Awash have already reported continuous tremors throughout the night, suggesting that many smaller, undetected quakes are occurring alongside the larger ones. Without precise data, authorities struggle to determine if these tremors signal an imminent volcanic eruption or another major earthquake. Please like and subscribe my channel.